Welcome to Athens City Council. This evening, we will be meeting in council committees. The meeting will be called to order by the City Council President, who will then pass discussion over to a respective committee. The chair of the committee will introduce the discussion topics and provide an overview of the issues at hand. If needed, members of the administration will offer brief statements to provide further context. We will then welcome input from the community. Any citizens who wish to speak will be asked to state their name and address, both verbally and on the sign and sheet located at the podium. Individuals will be given one opportunity to share their thoughts, and the committee chair will have the authority to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Once all citizens have had the opportunity to speak within the 15-minute time period allotted for total public participation on each topic, the public comment portion will be closed. Council committee members will then continue their deliberations. There may be additional questions directed to the administration during this time. When the discussion on the topic concludes, the chair will indicate whether legislation will be introduced at the next regular session of council and move on to the next item on the agenda or adjourn the committee if their work is complete. The next committee chair will then call their committee to order, proceeding in the same manner as before. Once all committees have adjourned, City Council will conclude for the evening.
Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, October 14th, 2024 at 7:02 p.m. and we are in committees this evening. I'd also, before we start, like to say Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And we don't normally read our land acknowledgement during committees meeting, but I thought tonight it was appropriate. I'd like to start by acknowledging that here in Athens County, we live and work on land initially settled and developed by earlier peoples, particularly the Shawnee and the Osage, and those identified through cultures commonly known as the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient. This acknowledgement reminds us of the importance of honoring history, people, and the planet as we work to improve our city's legacy. Since time immemorial, earlier peoples have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across the generations. On Indigenous Peoples Day, we celebrate the invaluable contributions and resilience of Indigenous peoples. Our first committee of this evening is Committee of the Whole. And the first item this evening is the 2025 sewer increases. Mr. Reisner, would you like to introduce the sewer increases, or would you like me to do that?
Would you please do it? My throat's kind of
Absolutely
bad tonight.
So we have a number of sewer increases that are recommended by the city administration. This would be in reference to city sewer rates in Title V. And the request is to increase sewer rates by 3%. Are there any questions or additional information from the city administration?
You're certainly additional information.
Excellent.
We do this often, and this is inflationary pressures that we're experiencing and the cost of materials. And the 3% increase would not go into effect until 2025, the beginning of the year.
Okay, we now have an opportunity for citizens to engage in the matter of the sewer increases. Is there anybody who would like to address City Council regarding the 2025 sewer increases? Seeing none, I will turn to council discussion. Council, would anyone like to chime in on the sewer? Member Reisner.
Excuse me. How does the 3% increase compared to other communities of our size or shape and so on? Are we within the ballpark? Are we higher or lower or what?
Please, Mayor.
We're right in the middle of the pack when it comes to municipalities that are our size within southeastern Ohio and likely throughout the state for cities that have a population of 25,000. And then the 3%, again, it's keeping up with inflationary pressures. Plus years ago when we had the plant renovated, we put together a schedule of annual increases that we would see within the system. And this is right in alignment with that. And early on, I think we had some higher percentage increases, but it was because of the debt service that we were paying for the renovations made. But at this point, we're in that 3%, so it's dropped down from what I recall it being in the 2016-17 timeframe. But this was all, again, monetized over a period of 16 to 20 years. I can't remember the actual amount of years that it was, but we put together a schedule back in the day, and we were able to sit there and make some adjustments to see what was the most affordable over time. But 3%. The increase, but more importantly, what the current rate is again, we're within Southeast Ohio, we're probably below the mean in terms of what the rates are.
Yes, Member Wood.
Do we know what in real terms 3% means to the average household? Do we know what that, is it gonna be like $3 or, what does that actually mean increase-wise for the average consumer bill?
Yeah, Councilmember Wood, what I can do is I can put together some examples for different residential consumption, but also, or utility rather, and then I can also do the same thing for some of the businesses. So we have actual numbers. I haven't done that to provide to you tonight, but I think it's easy to do.
Any other questions about the sewer increases? Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda is the indivisible Appalachian Ohio Resolution. City Council heard during the public commentary period at last week's meeting about this group who is urging state leaders and local governments to support a citizen-led, transparent commission to draw legislative districts. Yes, Member McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. I would like to state for the record that I will recuse myself from this conversation as a candidate for the State House of Representatives, and I'll just be sitting in the audience until we move on to our next topic.
Thank you, Member McCary. Would the city administration like to have any input on this resolution?
No.
Okay, you'll get a chance in just a second.
Okay.
Now we turn it over to the public. Does anyone here from the public like to speak to the resolution urging state leaders and local governments across Ohio to support creating a citizen-led, transparent commission to draw legislative districts? So please come to the podium.
I don't live in the city limits.
That's okay. You're welcome to comment. Thank you for stating that. Just give us your name and whether you represent a group.
Susan Riggy. I've been out canvassing both for citizens, not politicians, and under this I have on my indivisible shirt because I've been out for both groups today. And I just want to say that I think this would be very helpful in terms of lifting the fog over the language that's on the ballot, and people don't know how to vote for this. When the language says that this will require gerrymandering, even when they go in prepped, they get confused as soon as they see that. So having this body be public, which not only will say vote yes, but explain the reasons why, I think it'll help the public understand it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to speak to this issue? Okay, we will now turn it over to the City Council. Member Spielness.
Okay, thank you. As Ms. Riggi said, I think it's really important that we do this because of the opposition's misguided and deliberately disinformation that's being spread not only publicly, but also on the actual ballot language. And people who read the ballot language honestly think that it is a bad thing to vote for it, when in actuality, the way it's described, it does sound that way, but it does not reflect what's actually on the language of the proposed amendment to the Ohio Constitution. We have had corruption and a lot of difficulty with not following what the majority wants based on leaders in Columbus. And so there has been a very long and concerted effort to end gerrymandering and make sure that we have representative districts. So there are dozens and dozens of organizations around the state who are supporting the vote yes citizens, not politicians. The opposition is filled with people who already have a vested interest in keeping the corrupt system we have now. And I want to be really clear about that. There's lies out there, and we need to be very assertive about saying yes is not a political act. We should be ending gerrymandering across the country, and Athens should be part of that effort. It should be transparent. It should have equal numbers of Republicans, Democrats, and independents all working together to come up with districts that make sense, are fair, and give everybody a voice. So, thank you very much. Please vote yes. Please do this.
Member Clodfelter.
And I would just like to compliment the members of Indivisible for bringing this forward. I already know of two people, friends of mine, who, one was in tears after she realized she had voted no on issue 1 in the ballot box because she read the wording and got confused. And it's one of those cases where it's actually kind of risky to read the wording because they worked very hard to make it confusing. So those two people wish they could get their votes back so they could vote yes on issue 1. And I think the more attention we can give to that, the better. And also, we just need to we have districts that will keep the representatives accountable to their people. There's so many people, so many elected officials at the state level in Ohio who ignore their constituents and don't even do much to answer their messages and their phone calls that they get in their offices. And they don't have to. And I had back when I worked for Senator Sherrod Brown, I was at an event once where there were some Republican officials and their districts were being redrawn and they were kind of worried, but one of their wives said to me, yeah, but his district will still be all Republican. It's, he's not gonna have to work to meet his new constituents, no matter what the district is, because they'll vote R. So that's not good for anybody. That's not even good for those Republican constituents in those people's districts. We need to have districts that are competitive enough that people have to pay attention. And I think the best way to do that is to have fair districts. So because of the experience of my friends, I would just say if people want fair districts, it's a yes vote on issue 1.
Yes, Member Wood.
Yeah, I'll join in the chorus saying how great I think this project is. Indivisible does fantastic work. I've helped on their toy drive in the holidays for folks that wouldn't otherwise have the same access. They do haircuts for folks in the community, just a great group, big fan, and have also seen the misinformation and disinformation. I was spending time with my grandfather-in-law this weekend, and he'd gotten bombarded with the counter messaging and was confused. And he's a smart guy, so it's definitely more pervasive than we would think. Also, I commend my friend Micah for his ethics and quality of character. But I think it isn't a campaign issue necessarily. You shouldn't fear accountability in your districts, and so Mike always has ethics and character to spare. But I think that it's not a issue to support this. It's not a partisan thing if you're, to be accountable to voters. So strongly support it.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go ahead and read this into the record. It will be a one reading resolution at next week's general meeting. So I'll go ahead and read it into the record now. Introduced by all members of council, a resolution urging state leaders and local governments across Ohio to support creating a citizen-led, transparent commission to draw legislative districts. Whereas, in a democracy, every vote must count the same, making sure all voters, no matter who they are or what their political views may be, have equal representation, and whereas the Athens City Council opposes creating legislative district maps in Ohio that put political parties' interests ahead of those of voters, and whereas Ohio's current redistricting process has repeatedly created district maps without direct citizen input, and these maps have been ruled unconstitutional several times because of extreme party bias, and whereas weakening the votes of working-class people, whether in small towns or big cities, reduces the political power of working-class communities across Ohio, and whereas concerns have been raised by citizens that current maps unfairly reduce the voting power of working-class voters of color by splitting up their communities and cities, making it harder for them to elect representatives who truly represent their interests, and whereas citizens have expressed concerns that the current maps reduce competition for state legislative seats, and reducing competition makes it harder for voters in small towns like Athens to replace politicians they believe prioritize developers, corporations, and campaign donors over working-class voters, and whereas several bipartisan bills that address critical issues, such as funding public schools, preventing utility shutoffs, expanding internet access, and supporting renters and low-income homeowners, have stalled in state legislatures created by the current redistricting process, directly impacting blue-collar residents of Athens. Whereas the city of Athens has a duty to stand up for fair representation and set an example by condemning the unfair process for drawing legislative districts that take away power from voters across Ohio. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, Athens City Council hereby urges state leaders and local governments across Ohio to support creating a citizen-led, transparent commission to draw legislative districts. The commission should not include current or former politicians or paid lobbyists to ensure it stays fair. Section 2, this resolution shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor. Any other additional comments from city council members? Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next item on our agenda. The for rejoining us, Member McCary. All your character and your... The last item on the Committee of the Whole agenda this evening is to confirm the mayor's reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have discussed this. This issue has been tabled. It has been brought back off the table and returned to committee, which is why it reappears this evening on our Committee of the Whole. And this is in regards to two reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This has triggered a fairly in-depth examination by the law director and other officials within the city administration at what our municipal code says when it comes to the authority of reappointing board members and commissioners. That's the introduction. I would turn it over to the city administration for any input.
You want me to start?
Sure.
All right. Well, buckle up, everybody. I too read what the law director had sent everybody, and I also contacted the law director to inform her, which she understood, that there's errant information in here in the letter that she sent council. I believe she sent you a revised.
No.
Councilmember Crowell, President Crowell.
I don't believe all members of council received the communications that you're speaking.
Okay, but it was sent to you and I believe.
Yes.
Okay. And that being the examples that the law director provided to all of council included 3 boards and commissions or commissions, 4 boards and commissions, 3 of which are council appointees, to where it references reappointments. It speaks to appointments, then it also speaks to reappointments, which makes a lot of sense if you stop and think about it. The boards or commissions that the council is responsible for, seeking members for, appointing them, and reappointing them, I have no say in the Affordable Housing Commission, the Community Relations Commission, several of those commissions, the Environment and Sustainability Commission, all of those, it is completely within council's control to appoint and to reappoint. So it makes sense that reappoint is in that piece of legislation, all of them. If you look carefully at the 13 boards and commissions that I select individuals to serve on, it doesn't state reappointment in there anywhere. It states that council, I would appoint somebody, and council would confirm those individuals to sit on whatever boards that we're referencing, this one being the Board of Zoning Appeals. There is one where there is a reference to reappoint. It's the Rec Advisory Board. However, it doesn't reference anything beyond the appointment made by, confirmed by council. It just speaks to appointments and reappointments shall serve a 3-year term of which is staggered, and so on and so forth. So that's the only reference there. The action that the law director posted was the course of action for council would be, if you thought that this was an issue, would be to amend code. And therefore, are you amending one or you're amending everything? So I'm going to really cut to the chase. Since it's silent in code to the Board of Zoning Appeals, as well as any other board that I appoint individuals to, Shade Tree Commission, Disabilities Commission, I can go on and on and on, to include the Rec Advisory Board Commission as well. Since it's silent, and regardless of what past mayors may have done to bring something forward to City Council, my policy now is, since it doesn't say anything about reappointments, because you've appointed them once, and it's under my authority to reappoint individuals in the future, that there's really nothing that council has to weigh in on. The other thing, if you read through a lot of the code, it's pretty prescribed, and the Board of Zoning Appeals is one such, where if someone does something egregious while serving on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I can put together a panel that reviews the egregious act that has occurred, or any transgression that that person has done while serving in that capacity as a volunteer, that I can have that person removed. Under ORC, that's one of those few that's very prescriptive. Here's what you need to do if you have to remove somebody. Because this is an ORC law that we have fitting within the City of Council. So I'm going to make this short and sweet for all of you. Since there is nothing in code, it is silent to whether I reappoint somebody. I have reappointed both members to the Board of Zoning Appeals, both Ben Lockman and Joe Kraus.
One second, Member Spelness. Okay, you've gotten the introduction from myself as the chair of this committee. You've heard from the city administration. Is there any public input on this matter? Please approach the podium. Let us know if you represent a group and your address, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, President Crowell, and members of council, for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Damon Crane. I'm here on behalf of United Athens County Tenants to, speak to 2 separate but interrelated issues tonight. The first of which is why we believe that Joe Kraus has no business whatsoever being on the Board of Zoning Appeals. In the last year alone, the city of Columbus has threatened to criminally prosecute Mr. Kraus over his refusal to abide by that city's zoning regulations. And the city of Athens, over the years, has on multiple occasions threatened to criminally prosecute Mr. Kraus over his refusal to abide by our city's housing safety regulations. Following a ceiling collapse at a rundown Kraus rental property on North Schaefer Street in August of 2022, UAC launched an investigation of Kraus. We reviewed 14 years of Athens City Code enforcement records covering 17 rental properties that Kraus operated in Athens under seven different LLCs. We interviewed several of his past tenants and reviewed evidence they had compiled. We looked into Columbus City records, and here's some of what we found. Kraus's Athens properties failed 110 out of 113 regularly scheduled inspections between December 2008 and mid-September 2022. That's a failure rate of 97.3%. Kraus repeatedly escaped code compliance by failing to show up for inspections. He was a no-show for scheduled inspections 17 different times, and on 10 of those occasions, his no-shows prevented the property from being inspected that year. Partly by preventing inspections through no-shows, Kraus was able to operate rental properties that went as long as 8 consecutive years without demonstrating code compliance, yet the city of Athens continued to issue Mr. Kraus permits to house tenants in those properties each of those years. In the year leading up to the August 2022 ceiling collapse at 79 and 79.5 North Schaefer Street, Kraus Rental Properties refused tenant requests to make repairs required by city code, as evidenced by emails provided by tenants. And I want to point out that Kraus only escaped criminal prosecution for unsafe housing conditions because city officials did not abide by city code. We found that nearly 25% of the time that code enforcement had issued notices of violation, it didn't return to perform the required reinspection to see whether those violations had been corrected. And in a case I reviewed, or that UACT reviewed in the statement it sent to council members today, dealing with 84 and 84.5 Court Street, the city essentially gave Kraus 141 days to comply with what was a 15-day order to comply. If you don't comply with a 15-day order to comply, you're supposed to be prosecuted. The city issued 2 of those orders, yet didn't secure compliance until 2.5 years after initially noting what grew to be 37 separate housing code violations in that instance.
Mr. Crane, please, please complete your comments.
Yes,
Thank you.
I will. The point I want to make is that the mayor didn't break with decades of precedent because he thought that there was an obscure legal issue that meant he really didn't need your approval after all. He cut you out of the equation because he thought you would agree with what I'm telling you tonight after looking at the evidence at hand. And what is the purpose of the mayor behaving like an autocrat, breaking from long-standing democratic practice? It's to ensure that on his watch, not even one landlord is ever held accountable for habitually violating city housing safety standards.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Crane.
think that's extremely concerning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment tonight on the BZA reappointments? Yes, please, Mr. Rittenhouse.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Rusty Rittenhouse. I am Mr. Kraus's attorney. My business address is 449 East State Street. For the last several years, Mr. Kraus has faithfully served on the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Athens. This is an unpaid position. For all those years, Mr. Kraus has volunteered hours of his time to give back to our community. Mayor Pattison has now reappointed him for a second term. Mr. Kraus is one of the few Jewish public servants in Athens. Unfortunately, in his life, he has been subjected to anti-Semitism. It is repulsive that such racist targeting continues to occur. Earlier today, a city council member disseminated defamatory statements about Mr. Kraus that appear to have been originated from an organization called the United Athens County Tenants. The other nominees for the Board of Zoning Appeals are not Jewish. Interesting enough, they have not been subjected to these same personal attacks. It's quite telling that the smear campaign makes no mention of anything Mr. Kraus has done as an official during his time on the Board of Zoning. Instead, these malicious and false statements focus on Mr. Krause's profession. They are designed not only to hurt him as a public servant, but also his ability to make a living in our community. It is an absolute joke for the United Athens County tenants to represent they have investigated minority-owned small businesses in our community. First, regarding the 79.5 North Schaefer Street, which they allege had a roof collapse. This property is owned by Jim Managements LLC. It is not personally owned by Joseph Krause. Rather, Mr. Krause is a member of the company, and through Krause Rentals, he further manages this residence. In late spring of 2022, the former tenants of this property were released from their lease after one of them represented they were battling cancer and were facing financial difficulties. Shortly thereafter, 2 new tenants took possession of the property. Around August of 2022, a small section of the roof of the property was compromised by the negligence of a neighboring tenant. The tenant had permitted their dog to play on the roof of 79.5 North Schaefer Street. We actually have a photograph of the dog on top of the roof of 79.5, evidencing what happened in this situation. Apparently their investigation missed this. In the process, the tenant's dog dug into the membrane of the roof. This resulted in a small section breaking open. This was reported to Mr. Krause after business hours. He immediately went to the property and did everything he could to remedy the problem. To further satisfy the concerns of the tenant at 79.5 North Schaefer Street, Mr. Krause agreed to release the tenants from their lease. In doing so, he provided them with a full return of their security deposit, as well as a full return of all future rent they had paid. He also provided them with a full return of the past rent they had paid for the time prior in which they lived at the property without complaints. The United Tenants also allege that code inspection has, the United Tenants' allegations about code inspections are also intentionally misleading. The code, do you mind if I spin it?
Go ahead.
The code inspections they refer to are initial inspections. They are designed to find damage that have occurred while the properties are in the exclusive possession of the tenants. At these inspections, it's very common for landlords to first learn of damages that have occurred as a result of tenant negligent or ordinary wear and tear. The tenants are then given notice of such issues, and they are given a reasonable amount of time to remedy them. What the United Tenants fail to disclose is that Krause Rentals successfully passed all the code's follow-up re-inspections. In other words, all identified problems from the initial inspection of the properties were timely remedied by Krause Rentals. The United Tenants next allege that Mr. Krause missed inspections. They fail to mention, though, that these inspection notices were sent to the wrong location. Mr. Krause did not receive the notices. There are multiple individuals that have ownership interests in the companies that own these properties. And as a result, there was some confusion as to where the notices were to be sent. As soon as Mr. Krause learned of these issues, he updated the code's records. Since 2022, these notices have been sent to the correct location and no further inspections have been missed.
Please complete your comments. Thank you.
Next, the United Tenants claim that Mr. Krause has somehow evaded criminal prosecution. This is just false. Mr. Krause has never been criminally charged with any code violation. Apparently, Jewish business owners aren't entitled to due process. Additionally, finally, United Tenants points to this code violation out of Columbus. This was actually from a company that's called Leroy and Maggie, which Mr. Krause has an ownership interest. That particular issue related to the property owner putting gravel down for parking, which was the same practice of all the neighboring tenants. The city informed the property owner this was not permitted. The company then apologized, made the requisite changes, and the matter was dropped by the city. No criminal charges were filed.
Thank you, Mr. Rittenhouse. Would anyone else like to speak tonight on this issue of the BZA reappointments?
Hi, I'm Rob Delich. I live here in the city on Morris Avenue. I'm the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals currently for the city of Athens. I'm going to speak in, I guess, that capacity in to some extent here. And while I laud the work that United Athens County tenants have done and try and hold tenants accountable, I don't feel this is the right opportunity to do that. I think it's mixing, as the previous speaker says, sort of mixing the business and the personal volunteerism of Mr. Krause mixing those things up. His representation on the Board of Zoning Appeals really doesn't have anything to do with his capacity as a landlord directly. I will say that my feeling is that Mr. Kraus is a very valuable member of the board, and I definitely look to his expertise and his business experience to, in some ways, help guide what the board does to some extent as a member of the board. So I find his tenure on the Board of Zoning Appeals helpful to me as the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Deloach. Any other comments from the public? We appreciate you being here tonight and sharing your comments. I now open it up to the City Council. Member Spielness, did you have something to?
I do.
Okay, you're up.
I thank those who have spoken on this issue, and I appreciate Mr. Rittenhauer's defense of his Rittenhouse, his defense of his client, and I appreciate the information provided by UACT and Mr. Delich. All that being said, it seems to me that there's a couple of different issues here. One of them is that should we, as city council members, be allowed, as it has been for, decade or more, to determine whether someone should be reconfirmed, if you will, reappointed, or whether that should be solely the responsibility of the mayor? I think not. I think it is fair that we should have a say in what kind of person is best qualified, and after having seen what they've done, perhaps their reputation or their cooperation or lack thereof or some other qualification would make them less ideal than someone else. And I think it seems a little too, and I think the word was autocratic, I think, to feel that the mayor should have sole responsibility for making that. And let me finish. Thank you very much, Mayor. We'll hear from you in a moment. I do have to say that Mr. Delich is correct that it is a different kind of responsibility to be a landlord, as well as being on this voluntary board, which is laudable. I appreciate that. On the other hand, if we're going to have someone who essentially represents the landlords, it seems to me that we should have someone who is exemplary. And it does not seem, based on, even if you have some of what UACT reported was completely accurate, that it should be really someone who is exemplary rather than less than mediocre, perhaps. Or at least that seems to be the way it is. And also, I do have to say that I have observed the BZA and recent meeting, and I found Mr. Kraus to be abrasive to the people who spoke, which I found inappropriate, a little too harsh, which I found inappropriate. So for those two reasons, I do not support Mr. Kraus being reappointed, and I'm sorry that the mayor decided to take this particular instance, knowing that there was some opposition, to suddenly take this big leap of power to cut us out of the process, when he actually wanted us to be involved in the first place. So I find that uncomfortable, and I don't really understand why he would stake so much for Mr. Kraus. I'm curious about that. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Other city council members, would you like to comment on this issue? Mr. Wood?
Yeah, zooming out a little bit, I just want to say that, current personalities aside, and whether or not we like Mr. Kraus as a person, I'm uncomfortable with having no, these being essentially lifetime appointments. If there's no reconfirmation, on our part, then I think that that, in effect, becomes a lifetime appointment. And especially on an immensely powerful board such as the BZA, I think that that is something we should rectify quickly. Again, staying out of the Joe and the current thing, even, I think that that's part of the job. We shouldn't have boards like this be, in effect, without termination unless they've done some sort of cause. So I think that's my main issue here is not, I don't know Mr. Kraus, but I do know Ben and Rob very well, and I'm big fans. I like both of you very much. But I still don't think you should have a appointment without another hearing. I just think that that's part of the deal. And these are massively powerful boards. BZA, to overrule it, takes something like, what, 6 of us? 5 out of 6 to overrule it? So whether or not Joe should be reappointed, I think that that's a massive error we should fix.
Any other members of council? Yeah, Member McCary.
Thank you. I'll defer to the president in terms of if these issues start to become too unrelated to this specific appointment, but I do appreciate Member Woods zooming out because this highlights for me a question about rules, which I was looking into our city council rules earlier today and seeing a provision for when non-council members have concerns about appointments, and they can present that in some written form. So that's the lens through which I perceived the information that we received from the Tenants Association, and it made me start to wonder about our appointment processes for commissions and boards more generally, thinking about having something like the Community Relations Commission that has openings now, and if we did have city documentation through our discrimination claims or through our code enforcement that said that there was an issue or documented concerns from citizens. I've noticed that we have increasingly, in my time on council since I started in 2021, started being more formal with the appointment information shared, reading bios of members and such, but I've not ever seen us debate whether or not someone should be on or present or hear evidence of such. So I'm just wanting to defer to the president as to whether or not that needs to be a future conversation and part of rules, or if that's part of this conversation.
I'll go ahead and speak to that and then see if any other comments from council members. Yes, I think that all council members should take a close look at our city council rules. We will be discussing them further. We have a number of recommendations for things to discuss from members of council, and if you have any other, as we said a few weeks ago, please send those to me, and we have a committee of the law director and the clerk of council who can review these and not negotiate, but talk with the concerned council member who is proposing changes the best way forward, and then we'll have that as an agenda item to discuss at all of council. And I would say the same for our municipal code. It does appear that the information in the code is not consistent across all boards and commissions. It is not clear on appointments versus reappointments. And if anybody would like to propose changes to the code, and I would do that obviously with the law director, that can definitely be an agenda item in order to tighten things up. And really, zooming out, as Member Wood said and Member McCary reiterated, are we just talking about the BZA here? Are we talking about all our boards or commissions? Are we talking about council commissions? Are we talking about mayoral commissions? There's a big piece here that really should be a part of the discussion. If you look at our code and you look at our council rules, we could use some more clarity, and I appreciate any council member who is willing to propose some solutions. So does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Other council members, anything to add on this item? I would like to ask the city administration if they'd like to comment further.
I would absolutely love to comment further. A couple things. Most, if not all, of our boards and commissions have term limits. And so to Council Member Wood's point, they can't serve forever because there are term limits with a number of our boards and commissions. I would be, more than happy to revisit term limits that currently exist out there. The other thing, if we're going to talk about, autocratic activities, whatever those might be, which is silly, is council as a body has the complete authority to appoint to your own boards and commissions. So therefore, if we're going to go amending stuff, I think that would be appropriate to include a clause that says that the mayor of Athens can veto any appointment that you have. Because I have no say in the 6 or 7 boards or commissions that you put people on, and you are a collective body. And so that's something that I want to make sure is clear. The other thing, and Councilmember Spielness, to your point, a couple things. Number one, what you viewed on the last BZA meeting, I know that the board member under question apologized to the individual, and I have a text, if anybody wants to see the text, from that individual who came before the BZA and said he accepted the apology from Commissioner Kraus and that everything is fine. As a matter of fact, I met with him this morning, and he was waffling as to whether or not to come here tonight to speak, but he's an individual who doesn't like speaking before anybody. It was great that he spent 45 minutes in my office talking about things. The other thing I want to ask of council is the question that I raised the last time, to which it fell completely silent. I would like to know from city council, from any of you, what has, since the last time you reauthorized member Joe Kraus to be on the BZA, what has happened in his position as a board member, serving as a volunteer for the city of Athens? What has he done that warrants the comments that I'm hearing from the dais right now? I'd love to know. I would love to know. And I didn't get an answer the last time I asked the question, so now I'm asking it again.
Yes, Member Spielness.
I know for me, was not aware of Mr. Kraus's record as a landlord, and that does influence me. I think that if you're going to be on a commission, you ought to be, as I said earlier, an exemplary person in that field, and that should be reserved for someone who's exemplary. And I don't, based on what I've heard from the emails we've received and the report we've heard about, I don't see him as exemplary. So, leave it at that.
I'll just note that Member Swank, who's obviously not able to be here tonight, and I know Member Spielness was not able to be here at our last meeting. Member Swank was also concerned, but when this was brought off the table, he remarked that he had received a completed report, an updated report since the investigation from the code office, and that there were no current issues with this landowner. So that's, you'll have to talk to Mr. Swank if
That's a
if you have
positive
more
direction.
information, but that was shared. Anybody else like to address anything on this issue? Okay, that completes Committee of the Whole. And we are now moving on to the Transportation Committee. This is chaired by Member Spielness, joined by Member Clodfelter, Member McCary, and Member Reisner. Council will remember that we are now joining the audience as public citizens during committee meetings. Thank you. It's all yours, Member Spielness.
Okay, thank you very much. Under transportation, today we have 2 items. One of them is a citywide curb ramps, project 366. and it has to do with accepting bids for construction and construction engineering. Didn't get much information about this, but the city will be submitting for federal approval on the curb ramp project on October 1st, it says here. EPW is hoping to start advertising on October 15th, tomorrow, and the current bid opening date is scheduled for November 6th. I'm assuming if that's, oh, and also, as Small Cities ODOT Fund 589, appropriate and authorize $1,082,858 for construction engineering. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Mayor?
So just to remind you of our new sort of order, that's your introduction. And now the public gets a chance to, I'm sorry, my bad, city administration. I'll be quiet over here. You take over.
We'll get used to it.
You summed it up well. There's a DOT pass-through that we're receiving, and it will be for the replacement or installation of new ADA ramps throughout the city. And if I may, there are select intersections on 2nd Street, Clark, Schaefer, West State, Brown, West Union, Smith, Columbia, Grosvenor, Fort, East State Street, Elmwood, Home, Shannon, Hudson, Lincoln, Sunnyside, Stewart, Watt, Maplewood, Ohio, East Union, Elliott, Alexander, Mill, Arden, Madison, Strathmore, Kurtz, and Curran. So this is, 1 million plus to do curb cut new ones or replacements is going to get us a long ways with, further expanding our ADA compliance in the replacement world, but also to build new ones where they don't exist. Certainly is going in the right direction to make every street accessible to all.
Yeah, I just want to add that I'm really pleased that the administration is doing this. This is an important step, as you said, to add to our ADA compliance. I know that'll make a lot of people in the community very happy. So, thank you. Any member comments?
Question.
Now it's the public, actually.
For the transportation?
Sorry,
What about the
Yes.
Transportation Committee?
that comes at the end.
Oh, my gosh. We have to get used to a new system, sorry. Okay, from the public.
Hi, I'm Rob Delich, live on 124 Morris Avenue here in the city. I've served on the City Council's Ad Hoc Pedestrian Accessibility Committee that wrote a plan, talked a lot about this issue, and the safety and accessibility of our sidewalks and our streets in the city of Athens. Also currently serve on the City Council Task Force on Pedestrian Accessibility and Bicycling, and also on the Disabilities Commission Accessibility Committee. So I can speak well to this, and I will say this is probably the most important project the city's executed since I've lived here to improve the accessibility in our city. So it's going to make a huge difference. Will it fix everything? No, it's focusing on curb ramps, and sometimes the sidewalk intervening those curb ramps isn't in optimal condition yet. But this is needed to get us there, and it's an important project. Very excited the city was able to acquire this money from a federal source directly from the feds, which means it's a good chunk of money. It's not piecemeal, so it's accomplishing a lot. Maybe every needed improvement on our sidewalks as far as curb ramps in the city, many of them, most probably, if not all. So it's a huge project. It's very important. And I'm glad to see it happening what seems so quickly, too. So it's, considering it's federal money, normally you have to wait around for that money for a while, but this seems to have come through quicker. And I'm glad to see it's happening as quickly as November. That's amazing. So looking forward to the benefits that we all receive from this, really, because one thing I like to say is that if you make a city accessible, it makes it better for everyone, not just the people that need those accessibility. Thank you.
Should we hold our comments until next week, or should we call it now?
So Member Spelnitz is chairing, and you are a member of the public, so if she would like to,
So,
you'd like to
since
come forward, you
Other
may.
members of the public spoke. You're up.
Michael Wood, Highland Avenue. Do I need to write my name down in the book as well? Just want to say that.
Better turn you on here if you're
Well,
going to
thank you.
speak like
Put my
that.
timer at you. Great. Just want to say how excited I am to see the curb cut project coming along. We heard a lot recently from our neighbor, David McNally, about the challenges that people in our community face around the curb cuts. Also, I think the mayor did something along those lines to make some action happen between time, which is great. Appreciate that. Good to see that those folks were out there grinding those down. Saw that in the Independent, and that's great. And echoing what Rob said, that these are much needed improvements. We're not the most accessible community. Hills and bricks are rough on anything other than able-bodied folks, and so I think this is a great thing to do, and commend those involved for doing it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood, for being here tonight.
Okay. Anybody else, or do we go to the committee, Transportation Committee? Last chance. All right, committee. I recognize you.
I would also like to commend the administration for getting on this so quickly. I thought it was really moving when Davey McNeely was here talking about just how many people experience problems because of our curb cuts or lack thereof. So it's absolutely wonderful that you've been able to find such a significant amount of federal money to use to address this issue. And I am personally delighted. I know that Uptown was the first goal, but I'm delighted that the streets that you mentioned are all over our community. And I had no idea you'd be able to fix that many at one time, and I really, really am delighted that this much progress is going to be made at once.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Spielness. I just wanted to point to the History, Culture, Artistic, and Creative Spirit chapter of our Athens 2040 Comprehensive Plan, where on page 12, we list the goals we have established. And the second to last in that section is improve uptown sidewalks with particular focus on accessibility and incorporate local history during the design process as recommended in the Essence of Athens plan. I believe that plan predates me, and just wondering if anyone recalls what the idea was around incorporating local history when we do improve our uptown sidewalks.
Let's keep it, yeah, right now we have to keep it to the committee members. Thank you, Mr. DeLetch. Committee members,
I don't know that answer to that, so perhaps somebody in the administration can figure it out. I don't know. Anybody else?
I mean, the Essence of Athens plan, I can't speak exactly to what's there for this. The age-old question of bricks versus other means of constructing sidewalks or intersections in order to respect our historical legacy with bricks, but also making everything accessible and removing trip hazards, et cetera. That's a complicated subject matter. We know that we have sort of protection in place for the downtown historical district area, not necessarily all these other neighborhoods where this work is being done. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Mayor.
I do. Part of the Essence of Athens, which is referenced in the comprehensive plan, was to possibly look at putting embedded in the concrete, if there's a new sidewalk put in, kind of the brief history of what said building, what former businesses were in such buildings. I guess a great example would be the Lastro building, which way back in the day was a car dealership. Just recognizing, so that was part of the comprehensive, or part of the Essence of Athens. There was a number of other things in the Essence of Athens that was probably too far-fetched. But that is, as things pertain to the sidewalk, I don't believe there's anything in the Essence of Athens to re-brick any sidewalks. We have been embedding brick, Athens block, in sidewalks. We've been doing that more so on Stimson Avenue, on West Union Street, and elsewhere where we do that with whoever is creating the sidewalks, is that we do embed Athens block. I would like to see a few more with a backwards N on them, but oh well, those are hard to come by. And, but that's part of what we do now in design phase, is we will embed Athens blocks flush, but not to bring back brick sidewalks. Brick sidewalks would be
Counterproductive.
extremely difficult in terms of not just maintenance, but navigating for someone who has a mobility issue or other abilities on that particular street. And I'll leave it at that. Unless you want me to get into intersections, but I don't. That's not what this is about.
Not tonight.
I think that covers it. Okay. But I do want to ask, do we need to speed this up so that it's an emergency next week that we vote on it? Do we need to do that?
I think we should.
Okay, it sounds like it based on the dates we're given here. Okay, so we'll take care of that. And ditto with the next item, the salt truck purchase. I think that seems to be something that's going to need to be approved quickly. So this is, I'm reading here, after checking truck, I guess they've already identified a truck, and checking other prices on trucks, I think Kurt Mail, who works in EPW, says, I think we should buy this truck, and they agreed to sell it to us for $110,000, which I guess for trucks these days, considering, is not a bad deal. So is there any other, that's all I have. It's a salt truck, by the way, so we need salt trucks. The Belpre salt truck purchase, and this would be appropriation authorization in 220 TC 500. And anyway, anything else you want to add?
Sure. This is a $200,000 piece of equipment that we're able to get for $110,000. It's unfortunate, the story behind, but it's worth mentioning to council because this is something that we certainly experienced with other entities in the city of Athens, and that is that Belpre was really challenged getting someone with their CDL to be able to operate said truck. So it has little mileage at all on it. And this is permissible under Ohio Revised Code 735.052 to where we don't have to go out to bid on this. We can direct purchase from another political subdivision, which is what the plan is. And as was mentioned, for us to be able to acquire this truck and to make sure that our drivers here down at Public Works have the time in which to become familiar with the truck and how its operations and whatnot before we get into snow season, I would request that council suspend the rules on this so that we can go ahead and purchase it. Suspend as well as an emergency clause in which we don't have to wait 30 days because we're looking at a November 4th shot clock on this particular purchase.
Well, clearly that seems like a smart move, and I'm sorry for Belpre, but happy for us. That was nice of them to make that available for us, and smart of the administration to be able to find out about it and make us able to do that. So next step is any comments from the audience? I know nothing about salt trucks, so I'm going to go with trust that they know what they're talking about. Anybody else want to discuss it? I think we're on a roll. Okay, that's all good.
Okay, we will move on now to the Planning and Development Committee. This is chaired by Member Swank, but I believe Member Spielness will be stepping in for him this evening. And she is joined by Member Thomas and Member Wood.
Okay. Is everybody ready? Can I just start talking now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I want to get your permission, make sure I'm doing it right. Okay. So as you recall, Lustro, which is that hotel, going to be that hotel by the green down there on Union and Court, That is going to be great eventually. And there's been a project having to do with what they call PACE, a Special Assessment Payment project. And we had gone through and we were all set to get it going. And then somebody figured out that there was an error, just an incidental error in the calculations. So we have to redo this and amend it. And that's really what this is all about. And I think it's a wonderful project. I'm sorry that it needed to be amended, and it's going to be more. The payments will be more. So I think the mayor can add to that, I'm sure.
I believe, as you indicated, it was the transcription of the amounts. It was 2.3 million, if I'm not mistaken, and it was supposed to be 3.2 million. So it's correcting that, basically. Again, this is not a cost to the city or to the taxpayers. This is for the Lostro Hotel itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and should be a great project when it's done. We'd already discussed it before. There really isn't any, shouldn't be too many, but it was just an oops. So we have to fix the oops in order to make it work. Anybody out there want to ask about this?
Beth Clodfelter, South Shannon Avenue. This oops, was the investment company already aware of the correct amount? Or was this a really difficult moment to tell them that instead of 2.3 million, they
No,
owed 3.2?
they caught that. It was their error, and they caught it and
Okay.
brought it to our attention and said, we made a little mistake. Oops. Little, kind of a big mistake, but
Seems
in any case, I don't know what to say. I'm not the expert on this one. The administration knows more about it than I do, but I think that's really all what it's about.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Committee? Okay. Well then, those are mine. That's it for planning.
Okay, thank you, Member Spionis. We will move on to Finance and Personnel Committee, chaired by Member Reisner. I'm sorry, Safety and City Services, thank you. Chaired by Member McCary, joined by Member Reisner and Member Thomas.
Okay, thank you, President Krell. We just have one item on our City and Safety Services Committee agenda for the evening, and that is the acquisition of a public safety training facility. That would be project number 373. And in case you're like me and not sure what a public safety training facility might entail, our fire chief did provide me with some information that this training facility has the ability to offer anyone from our fire, police, EMS in the region training opportunities around technical challenges they might encounter on the job, including technical rescue training capabilities involving rope, trench, confined spaces, building collapses, heavy machinery, vehicles, water and ice emergencies. So this training facility is something that has been a desire of the administration for the last 10 years as a way to improve the qualifications and preparedness of our safety officials. And that would be my introduction, and perhaps the administration has something to add.
Just that this would be a authorization to appropriate the $2.9 million for this. $2.5 million would come from the Public Safety Capital Fund. $200,000 would come from 220 Street Fund, and then $200,000 would come from the Water Fund for this particular project. We're going to use $900,000 of that amount to put 50% down on a pre-order for a fabricated structure that Chief Reimer is wanting to put down there, and that we are allowed to go through. There will be a piece of legislation coming forward again tonight with GSA the General Services Administration to where we would go through a vendor under USGSA to purchase said prefab structure that'll be part of the training facility down there. I do want to add really quick that, you know, the benefit of us having a fire training center right here in Athens, certainly it will be helpful for our paid fire department. I see that it will be equally beneficial and useful for our volunteer fire departments that are not only here in Athens County, but in surrounding counties. Chief Reimer has surveyed a lot of those volunteer fire departments to ask, if we were to build this here, would you come, as opposed to having to go up to Reynoldsburg to the fire academy or to go down to Wellston to their burn building / training facility. And the letters he received back from the surrounding counties was an affirmative to where, yes, it would be more cost effective for us to be able to go to Athens as opposed to having to go all the way up to Reynoldsburg. And keep in mind that all of our volunteer fire departments that are in Athens County and surrounding counties, these are volunteers. I mean, they're not getting paid for doing what they're doing. And so for them to see the cost savings to have technical skills training here in Athens, I think is going to be a big positive for, unfortunately, a profession, it's not a profession, for a volunteer force that we're seeing become smaller and smaller because it's harder and harder to get younger individuals to become volunteer firefighters. And so hopefully this will inspire younger individuals because the training would be right here to be volunteer firefighters.
We've had our initial framing and input from administration. Do we have any comments from members of the public? Yes, please approach the podium and tell us who you are. If you're representing yourself, you can even sign in if you want.
I am representing myself, sort of, I guess. And I'm Sylvia Spelness. I live at 87 University Estates Boulevard. So I am just want to mention that a couple of years ago when I had spoken with Chief Reimer and about his aspirations for trying to make the city better and whatnot, he mentioned this facility. And one of the things that he mentioned I think is important, and you sort of alluded to that, Mayor, and that is that this would be an opportunity for people to come here and spend money in Athens rather than spending money in Reynoldsburg or somewhere else. So this would be, all in all, a great benefit to not only the people here that need this training, and they don't have to go far away for it, they can be right here. And I think one of the things that's been very difficult, as we've been aware of, is the training takes a long time to become a firefighter. You really need to learn a lot of stuff. And it takes a lot of people off the payroll, not off payroll, they get paid. Anyway, they get off not being able to do the work because they're not certified or qualified yet. So making them more available more locally and then bringing people here rather than sending them other places is really a net benefit in many different ways for years and years to come. So yes, I'm very glad that this is coming before council, and I hope that you all vote for it. And I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure that Chief Reimer is going to be so thrilled when hopefully it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the audience who'd like to speak on this agenda item this evening? Let's return to members of the committee then. Any comments? Member Thomas?
I just have a question. I missed, where does the 2.5 million come from?
That is from the grant that we received from the state.
That was really all I just missed it.
I do have a note from the Safety Services Director, the appropriation or authorization of 2.5 mil in Fund 206 for design and construction of a public safety training facility. We didn't indicate earlier that this would be at the end of Kinney Drive. And there's also a note that we would want to include a whereas that there will be future water and street appropriations requested for this project in order to connect the water line and road from the end of Kinney Drive to Elliotsville Road in order to increase access and redundancy in the water system. So we should probably also include that we received the 2.5 mil in the 2024 state capital bill. We appreciate that information from Safety Service Director Stone. Other members of the committee? Then I'll echo what members have said about what a nice resource this seems to be for our employees and for people in the region. And with that, oh yes, Member Crowell.
I'll just quickly note that in case you don't know, Elliotsville Road, Kenny Drive, going out Union 56, where UPS is located in the TS Trim building. It's at the end of that, where the new county EMS station is. So it's very well located for that county EMS station. Did you have something to add?
I do, and I'm glad you mentioned that, President Crowell, and that is that we have the new EMS station down there, and so to put this connector between Kenny Drive and Elliotsville Road from a life-saving standpoint will shave off minutes, rather than it having to go the end of Kenny Drive onto 56 and then back towards the city. This would give an alternate route for EMS to be able to get the people the care that they need.
Wonderful. Any other final comments from committee members? All right, then that concludes City and Safety Services Committee for the evening.
Thank you, Member McCary. We will now move on to our last committee meeting of the evening, and that is Finance and Personnel, chaired by Member Reisner, who was joined by Member Wood, Member Clodfelter, and Member McCary.
Thank you, President Crowell. Excuse me. I believe under the new rules that we're now operating, if there's anybody who is not directly concerned with what happens with Finance and Personnel Committee, they are free to leave. That includes council members who may not particularly want to hang around and hear all this. So it's up to you. You've been warned. First item, non-union compensation, labor supervisors. I believe the mayor has some information on that.
Oh, I do. Recently we lost one of our water labor supervisor who took a position elsewhere, and we've been struggling to fill this position for quite a while. So we do have an internal candidate. And so what we are proposing is to kind of shift some things around. The current labor supervisor would move to the water labor supervisor. Their current salary is $29.57 per hour. What we're proposing is a new salary of $31.50, and then $23.50 upon completion of their Class 2 EPA distribution license. An incoming sewer labor supervisor. We have an internal candidate, and again, so that we have parity among those supervisors, initially having $30.50 and then $31.50 upon completion of their Class 2 EPA collection license. And then a street labor supervisor, there's a correction, with the salary of $29.57, which is current, to $31.50 as well. A lot of these changes will take place in 2025, Councilmember Reisner, which with COLA is reflecting a 6% increase for these particular positions.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the audience concerning these increases for labor supervisors? Any council people in the audience like to? Who do I go to now, Mr. President?
No public input, then you're the committee.
Okay. Any committee members care to speak on this topic? Member Clodfelter.
I'm just curious. I think it's great that there are people who are willing to step up to these roles. Will there be a period of time in which they need to get required training or anything? And about how long will that period be?
I'm not 100% sure for their Class 2 licenses, both for collection and distribution systems. I'm sure it'll take some time. But again, off the top of my head, I don't know what the length of the training is, and then sitting for the test to receive their Class 2 licenses.
Follow-up question. Is it possible for those individuals to start the training now, or do they have to wait until they're in their new positions to begin the training?
They'll wait until they're in the positions to begin.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could you comment on how this compensation will help make the positions competitive for attracting future folks?
You know, we thank you, Councilmember McCary. I mean, we too, I mean, we were joking earlier, no, I should not joking, but, you know, talking about CDL licenses and that we're fortunate that we have a lot of CDL licensed people who work for the city of Athens, and it's a challenge elsewhere. Same holds true with certain positions. Instrument technicians are extremely difficult to find individuals who are instrument techs. It's a very, the average pay grade for someone who is an instrument tech out there, whether you're working in the petroleum industry or the polymers industry where you see a lot of instrument techs, you know, what they can yield from working in the private sector versus working in the city, you know, it's hard for us to compete. I would contend that these are the same, but equally important. It's just difficult, and I can share with you, this is a conversation that's ongoing with the Mayor's Partnership for Progress, which is now 24 counties in Appalachian, Ohio, to find qualified, licensed individuals or people who might be eligible for licensure at level 2. And in some cases, level 3, which is what our plant managers have a class 3. It's extremely difficult to find people who are willing to take on that role at what we're allowed to pay them. You know, we're in a lot of cases at a deficit when it comes to attracting. So these are internal candidates that are interested in being promoted and moving forward and seeking, you know, further licensure, which they're required to do with the class 2 licensures. And so that's a good thing for us. It's very difficult to have to advertise and get out there, you know, post a posting for positions to where we'd find people who are willing to accept the pay that we are able to offer at this point in time.
Is it your sense that pay would be on average with the other, say, cities within the mayor's partnership?
I would. I would say that, you know, we're probably, if you look at Chillicothe, Marietta, Zanesville, which are the larger cities, potentially Youngstown in the future, but they're not members yet of MPP, or Mahoning County, that, yeah, we're comparable for cities our sizes. And so it's often what you'll see is, you know, someone being able to eke up a little bit more what they're able to pay and start scalping, you know, stealing people and, from other municipalities.
Thank you.
The auditor, I think, has a question.
Or comment.
A comment?
I don't know that this was said, or maybe I missed it, but in my notes I have that Andy would like this ordinance to pass as soon as possible because we have these vacancies and we need to move these 2 in-house employees into those positions as soon as possible because they're supervisory positions. The other comment on here is that these increases will not be added to January 1st when everybody gets a new raise, that these will serve as their increase for the next year.
So the administration would then want an ordinance introduced Monday, rules suspended, passed, emergency clause?
It would be wonderful if council saw fit to suspend the rules with an emergency clause.
I think we can do that. Can't we? Oh, okay. Just want to be sure. You know, things are changing so fast around here, I can't keep up. Oh, well, I think we beat that to death. Let's move on. How about GSA Cooperative Purchasing Program participation? General Services Administration, we all know what that does, don't we? Care to explain it?
Sure do when I was in the Air Force. Yes, I mean, I'm just asking for council authorization to enter into the cooperative purchasing program under US GSA, much like we have with sole source as well as US communities. It allows us legally to be able to go out and purchase things without having to go through the whole bidding process and so on and so forth. And as I'd mentioned, there is prefab structures under USGSA that we could be using for the fire station, or the fire training center. It's not the fire station headquarters, it's the fire training center on Kenny Drive.
Does the GSA also have other equipment? I'm thinking there was once a proposal from HAPCAP to purchase used tour buses that were used in the national parks for transit purposes here, being that the government, federal government, disposes of them after there are so many hours on the engine rather than the number of miles. It's actually been driven, and in fact are in pretty good shape considering the tours and things that they do there. But I don't think anything ever really came out of that. So I'm wondering if we go into an agreement like that, HAPCAP would be eligible to take advantage of anything that they would see that could help them in the transportation side.
Yeah. Councilmember Reiser, I can certainly look into that. With HAPCAP, we're going to talk about legislation later about how we're moving funding from the 500s to the 300s for HAPCAP because we no longer own the buses that are running on the city streets. They're all owned and managed by HAPCAP, but I can certainly talk to HAPCAP about it or find out more as to whether, it can be something through the city in using GSA.
Exactly.
Purchasing, you can get just about anything on GSA, but an Abrams tank or an F-16, you can't get those. So.
Use shuttle or something like that. Yeah. Okay. I guess we go to the audience now. Anyone have any comments about the GSA purchasing agreement? No? Auditor? Yeah, is that
Well, I was just going to clarify the GSA thing. It's General Services Administration. It's a federal administration. If anybody doesn't know, it sets rules for all kinds of things. When we're setting our meal reimbursement allowances, that's the website that we go to. It just all kinds of things. So it's a federal reference for government agencies.
Anyone else? I guess we go to committee now. Committee members, any thoughts about this? No? All right then. Moving right along, appropriations. We have several. We have $1,500 to CDBG Formula Grant Fund to cover general administration, fair housing, and CHIP expenses, and CDBG is Community Development Block Grants. We've been doing this ever since I've been on council, and I think we've put them to pretty good use, considering they're not exactly large grants by any means, but we always seem to do well with them. Administration have any comments on this 1,500?
Well, this 1,500, it's going to cover, general administration, fair housing and CHIPS expenses at this point in time. So. And you're right, it's not a whole lot of money.
Yeah, you certainly are stretching it, I'll say that. Oh dear, I'm losing my audience. Any comments out there from whoever's left? No? No? Mary, I see you chuckling back there. You have anything to say? Not yet. Okay. Oh, I can't wait. Okay, moving right along. $45,000 to, sorry, a sewer fund to cover electric costs. Where do we get it?
Oh, for this?
Yes, 45,000. Sewer fund.
Yeah, no, this was, that our expenses with the sewer fund are just higher than we had anticipated, and so this is just covering that cost for electric bills.
This has nothing to do with our grid that we're building out there.
No.
No, okay. But once that's up and running, you think that'll help with our costs?
Let's hope.
Okay, hope so too. Members of the audience, anything to say about this? Members of the committee? Oh, I see. Member McCary was
Yes,
first.
I was just looking for some clarification as to whether this increase in cost is like the equivalent of someone's electric bill going up? Is that
It is.
what's happening here? Okay.
Member Wood?
Yeah, sorry, where's it coming from? Where's it going to? What's the, we don't have a, this is appropriations too, but where's it coming from again?
The sewer fund, $750. It's just part of the unappropriated money available in the sewer fund.
Moving, money from the sewer fund to the sewer fund.
Well, we're appropriating it. So the money is sitting there, but council sets a budget. And that's what's appropriated and we're allowed to spend. If they need to spend more than what council has already appropriated or passed in their budget, then they have to ask for more money and it comes out of the money. You know, it's like not spending down to the last penny in your checkbook. There's still money there, but without permission from council, they can't spend it.
So, does it come from the general fund? Is the?
No, this is
the sewer
proprietary.
fund.
Just-
Yeah, it's all those sewer bills that we all pay, and other sources of revenue, but the sewer fund is a proprietary fund, and the money that goes into there is what pays for it. Does not come from the general fund. Sure.
Put it in perspective. If the sewer fund, if the balance of the sewer fund is $1 million, right? Back at end of last year when they did the budget, the ordinance, they might have appropriated $750,000 that could be spent this year. That leaves an unappropriated balance of $250,000, sort of your padding. So when you get to this time of year and there's bills that have come up, costs went up, things went up, then you can appropriate more money in there. You would not want to appropriate this coming year, you would not want to appropriate your full amount because then you don't have any wiggle room. Does that make sense? So there was always a little bit of money. This just designates that extra $45,000 to be spent in the sewer fund.
Sort of relative to what I've been talking about in the general fund and that cash reserve balance policy, that we have to keep a balance in there for unexpected costs, and that's what they do in really all of the funds. We try to do that. Have some money there that's not already spoken for, so when an additional expense like this comes up, then we go to that. But the fact is, in the city, the council has to approve those additional costs.
So we're in effect just itemizing what it's actually gonna be spent for at the end, not adding more to the total number, or we are adding more to the total number?
We're adding more to the total expense budget.
Right.
Okay,
It's already in the revenue
okay,
budget.
good enough, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good explanation. Member McCary?
Thanks. Just riding that train of thought, I wonder then, it's unlikely that the electric bill is going to go down. Does this mean that we're going to need to plan for this for as we enter the next budgeting, anticipating a greater cost?
We already have.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And this is good through the end of the year. So by appropriating this, we're projecting through the remainder of this calendar year, the city's fiscal year, which is January to December.
Okay. Next, we have $25,000 appropriation to Cable Access Fund to replace the video production system used for multimedia broadcasting. And I believe we have an expert in the audience. Scott, would you like to come forward? Could you please give us your name and address? Do you represent a group?
Yes, City of Athens Government Channel. We're replacing our oldest system in the fleet down at the community center. It's pre-pandemic era. We're running Windows 7. It's overheating, failing on a regular basis. It's not reliable, so we're going to replace it.
Why do we have one down there?
The last two things we've done are community forums for legal and voters, We did Athena Awards earlier this year. We do several productions out of the community center.
I see. And where did that equipment come from originally?
It came from up here. It's been a year or two up here, and we'll hand me down this system down to there so we can get some more life out of this. This system is 2020, so it's got some hours on it too.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Auditor?
Just to comment about where the money's coming from, we do have a cable access fund, and that revenue comes from franchise fees for the cable system. So although the government channel is run out of the general fund, it's not, this equipment purchases, Scott kind of saves up that money for these big purchases and uses that fund, amount $250.
Member McCary, question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about what types of meetings and events will benefit from this improved technology at the community center. I've been to the Athena Awards when it's been there, but our Commission on Disabilities often meets there and has technological issues, and I'm wondering, is this just for big events or also like streaming meetings?
Just broadcast.
Okay.
The system that you're referring to has been replaced by the community center, and last month, I think.
Oh, great.
So should see some improvement in that.
Does that mean the community center is getting two?
They're
No.
separate
Okay.
systems.
Thank you.
Separate systems.
Member Clodfelder?
And that just begs a question. Maybe you've said this, Scott, but this new system, if approved, will it be housed here or will it be
Yeah, it'll be
not at the community
It'll
center?
be here. We're a hand-me-down system, so we get, like I said, this system is the system we use all the time for the last, 4 years, going on 5 years. So it's time to see some rest, and we'll get more life out of it down there.
Okay.
And we broke a microphone tonight in case anybody's interested. So.
Any other questions? Committee? Audience? Thanks. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Now we have transfers. $44,465 from Transportation Assistance Fund, decrease capital line, and increase professional service line. Who would care to speak to that? Administration or the auditor?
I can certainly start us off. This is
Okay.
what I had mentioned previously with council, and that's that we're migrating, the capital line is our 500s, and we're moving it into the professional services, which is 300s, and that's largely because we no longer own the buses, which makes perfect sense for us to keep money in capital, as opposed to taking that money now, since we don't own them, they're owned and managed by HAPCAP, and migrating it into professional services to where we do have a need as we're continuing to work with our public transit system.
Audience? Nothing out there? No? Members of the committee? Any questions concerning this hot topic? No? Okay. So I guess Monday we'll have the appropriate ordinances ready to introduce, and I don't see any emergencies here in this bunch, do we? Is there anything that's absolutely pressing that has to move forward before the end of the year? No? Okay. City sewer improvements, project number 330, to amend ordinance 1024. Mr. Mayor?
I am looking for that one. Oh. Here it is. Yeah, that we're going to add to the current project. This is 330 for the, and have appropriations and authorizations for the next phase of this particular project. The amount is $1,787,000 and $787,000 $215.
This is for phase 2 of the project,
This
isn't it?
is for phase 2 of the project.
And that'll cover the, sidewalks and so on?
It will, as well as the sidewalk that's going in, you may have noticed on the south side that goes basically from the Alco facility, the Athens Lumber Company building, which we own, down to the reuse store.
Mm-hmm. Anyone in the audience want to talk about this? Auditor?
Just to add that this money is a WPCLF loan at 0% interest. Money we're just taking out of our pot right away, but 0% interest loan.
Members of the committee? Hopefully we'll see Union Street completed one of these years. President Crowell.
Thank you, Member Eisner. I'll just clarify and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor. I believe this project is the boring underneath the bikeway, not the new spur that's going from the Alco building to Restore, which is part of the Union Street project.
You're correct.
Right?
This is the force main.
This is the force main that will be underneath the bikeway to the south of that area. Just a clarification.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Well, I don't see anything else for Finance and Personnel Committee, so it's concluded.
Thank you, Member Eisner, and we are adjourned for this evening. Thank you.